Zheng He was born in Yunnan province in early Ming Dynasty. His original name was Ma Sanbao. In his childhood, little Sanbao was captured by the invading Ming army. He was later castrated and became a eunuch for vassal Yan Zhu Di. After growing up, he followed Zhu Di to fight numerous battles and made continuous contributions. After ascending the throne, Zhu Di bestowed him a new name, Zheng He. With the support of Zhu Di and his grandson Zhu Zhanji, Zheng He led 7 maritime expeditions during his lifetime. In 1405, the third year after Zhu Di became the emperor, Zheng He made his first expedition. The first stop of his fleet was Java Island in Indonesia. When Zheng He and his men landed on the island, the East King and the West King were locked in a fierce fight. The West King defeated the East King and occupied his territory. Seeing so many people arriving, the West King thought they were reinforcements invited by the East King. So he ordered his army to attack Zheng He and his men. 170 Ming troops died in the attack. Soon truce came out. The West King knew the actual identity of Zheng He and his people. He was so afraid the Ming government would retaliate by sending troops that he asked to compensate with about 2,000 kilograms of gold to settle it peacefully. At that time, Zheng He's men were so angry that they vowed to take revenge for their fellow crew members. Focusing on the big picture, Zheng He reported the whole thing in every detail to Zhu Di, suggesting him to settle it peacefully. Zhu Di followed Zheng He's advice, and people in Java Island escaped the war. The government and people of the state appreciated the tolerance of Ming government and were especially grateful to Zheng He. 2 years later, Zheng He returned to China. In order to escort ambassadors from other countries back home, he soon began to make preparations for his second expedition. In the fall of 1407, he started out again, leading a fleet of 27,000 people. During this expedition, he set foot on a lot of states in southeastern and southern Asia, including Vietnam, Brunei, Thailand, Cambodia, Java, Malacca, Sri Lanka, and southwest India. Zheng He took a large amount of gold, silver, cloths, cooking wool, and other goods on the fleet, bestowed them to some temples as a gift. This expedition lasted for nearly 2 years. Zheng He and his people returned home in the summer of 1409. In his third expedition, Zheng He went to many places in southwest India and built a storehouse in Malacca. A large amount of food and other goods were kept in a warehouse, facilitating replenishment for future expeditions. In 1411, Zheng He and his fleet returned to China. 2 years later, Zheng He started his fourth expedition with 27,670 crew members. The size of his fleet this time was even larger than the past few expeditions. The fleet arrived at southern Vietnam, Java, Sumatra, and Malacca. In Sumatra, Zheng He separated his fleet into 2 branches. One headed to Sri Lanka, while the other went to the Maldives. The fleet eventually arrived at the Persian Bay and then began heading back. It stopped briefly when passing by the Maldives and returned to China in the summer of 1415. At the end of the next year, Zhu Di ordered Zheng He to escort some foreign envoys back to their home countries. This was his fifth expedition. Zheng He's fleet arrived at the east coast of Africa and the Arabian Peninsula and returned in the summer of 1419. In 1421, Zheng He again received the order from Zhu Di to escort foreign envoys back. In his sixth expedition, Zheng He arrived at 20 states such as southern Vietnam, Thailand, Somalia, and southern India. The following year, Zheng He returned to China with envoys from Thailand, Sumatra, Yemen, and many other countries. The seventh time Zheng He led the expedition was already the end of 1430. Zhu Di and his successor Zhu Gaochi had already passed away. The current emperor Zhu Zhanji was the grandson of Zhu Di. Zheng He, then 60 years old, started his seventh expedition with the support of Zhu Zhanji. It was the last expedition in his life. The fleet passed through places like southern Vietnam, Java, Sumatra, and southern India. Zheng He had originally planned to sail to southern Africa, but he got sick when the fleet arrived in southern India. In 1433, Zheng He died there at the age of 63, and the fleet returned to China soon after. From 1405 to 1433, Zheng He led 7 expeditions, passing through Southeast Asia, the Indian Ocean, and East Africa. He reached 30 countries and regions, and opened a new route from the western Pacific Ocean to the Indian Ocean. Zheng He's expeditions were unprecedented at that time. It was a century later that Columbus discovered America. Zheng He's expeditions were the last feat with global influence in ancient Chinese history. They showcased China's extraordinary strength in early Ming Dynasty and its strong navy power, and increased the connection between China and other countries. As the hero of such a feat, Zheng He was recognized later as one of the greatest navigators in world history.